Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into something from the early Christian world that honestly might just blow your mind. It's a story about a very different idea of divine fire, one that had nothing to do with eternal punishment.
So let's just jump right in with a pretty provocative question. What if the first Christians, the original thinkers, didn't believe in eternal hellfire? What if that whole idea wasn't the original view at all? What if they believed something completely different?
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we gotta go back, way back, to the ancient world. You see, there were basically two big ideas about divine fire floating around. Was it for punishment, or was it for purification?
So, in one corner, you've got the Egyptian view. Think terrifying torture, bloody punishment, endless confinement. Yeah, not a great time. No second chances, no purification. But in the other corner, you had the Greek and Hebrew traditions. They often saw fire in a totally different light, as a divine instrument, a way to cleanse away sin, a trial to purify you. The very first Christian theologians, they had to pick a side, and the choice they made would literally shape history.
All right, let's head east. We're going to the intellectual hub of the early Greek-speaking Christian world, Alexandria. This is where we meet the heavy hitters, the key figures who really champion this idea of a purifying fire.
First up, we have Clement of Alexandria. Now, this guy was a big deal. He was the head of the most influential Christian school of his day, super educated, and his whole mission was to make Christianity understandable to the really smart, sophisticated Greek world. He was a huge player in defining what early Christianity even looked like.
And check this out. This is his core idea, right from the source. For Clement, God wasn't some cosmic being out for revenge. No way. He believed God punishes only with an eye to the good. It's remedial. The whole point was to correct you, to bring you back to a good place, not just to punish for the sake of punishing. Okay, so next up is Clement's star student, a guy named Origen. And look, I really can't overstate how important this man was. For a solid century, he was the most influential Christian thinker in the entire Greek-speaking world. He was the very first person to sit down and write a systematic, book-by-book theological analysis of the entire Bible, a true giant. And this is where it gets really interesting. Origen takes that famous line, "Our God is a consuming fire," and flips it on its head. He says the fire doesn't consume you, it consumes the wickedness inside you. It's like a blacksmith's forge, you know? It burns away all the junk, that alloy of wickedness, as he so brilliantly puts it, leaving only the pure soul behind. It's a process of restoration, not destruction.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, so two smart guys in Alexandria thought this. But no, this wasn't some fringe academic theory. This idea was carried on by the absolute titans of the next generation, the Cappadocian Fathers. And these guys weren't rebels. They were considered the absolute pillars of mainstream Orthodox Christian belief.
I mean, just look at the resumes. Gregory of Nazianzus, they gave him the title the Theologian. That was a title previously reserved only for the Apostle John. That's how respected he was. And what did he call the lake of fire? A last baptism. Then you've got Gregory of Nyssa, the father of fathers, the guy they called the bulwark of the church against heresy. He taught that this cleansing fire would one day wipe out sin and death completely. These weren't outliers, they were the establishment.
So here's the bottom line, and this chart makes it super clear. When you map out the major Christian centers of learning back then, the idea of a purifying fire was absolutely dominant. You had Alexandria, Caesarea, Antioch, Edessa. All four of the big schools in the Greek-speaking East were teaching this. There was only one major school out in the Latin-speaking West that was starting to push a different view.
So you know where we have to go next. Let's head over to that one school in the West and meet the man, the single theologian, who would dramatically, and I mean permanently, change the course of this whole doctrine for Western Christianity.
And that man, of course, is Augustine of Hippo. It's hard to find a more influential thinker in all of Western history. It was his incredible mind and his powerful writing that basically locked in the idea of endless torment as the official, orthodox position for the entire Latin-speaking church.
But get this, here's the kicker, and it comes from Augustine himself. He actually wrote that in his time, indeed, very many Christians, his exact words, did not believe in eternal punishment. They believed in a temporary, purifying fire. And he even admits that they held this view because they were genuinely trying to be faithful to the scriptures. This just goes to show you how common the other view was, even as he was fighting against it.
And this table just lays it all out perfectly. You've got these two worlds of thought developing right next to each other in the early church.
In the Greek East, where all the original schools were, the view was overwhelmingly remedial and purifying. Meanwhile, in the Latin West, thanks to Augustine's massive influence, the definition was shifting to one of eternal punishment.
So the big question is, why? Why did Augustine think so differently from all these brilliant minds in the East? Well, if we dig into the history, it seems like a huge influence came from his past, from a philosophy he followed long before he ever became a Christian.
Right, so for 9 years before converting, Augustine was a Manichaean. This was a Persian philosophy, and its core idea was something called dualism. They believed that good, or light, and evil, or darkness, were these two equal, opposite, eternal forces fighting it out. And for them, the end goal of all of history wasn't for good to finally beat evil, it was for the two to be permanently and finally separated from each other forever.
And you can totally see the shadow of that idea in Augustine's later Christian thinking, can't you? His whole concept of the end times. It doesn't end with evil being defeated or transformed. It ends with evil being locked away, quarantined for all eternity, preserved forever but separated from the good. It's almost a perfect mirror of that Manichaean goal of a final, permanent separation.
And just to show you how different this was from what most other Christians were thinking, check out this quote from a guy named Titus of Bostra. He was actually writing against the Manichaeans, and he says, flat out, that God's punishments are holy because they're remedial. They're meant to force people to break off from their sins, not to preserve them in their wickedness forever. This was the mainstream view Augustine was pushing back against.
Okay, so this isn't just some dusty old theological debate, right? This massive shift in thinking had real, profound, and pretty dark consequences. Let's take a look at the long shadow that this one idea cast over the centuries.
So in the West, Augustine's view won. It became official doctrine. And here's where it gets really scary. This idea of God's justice, it became the model for human justice. The logic that was used to justify burning heretics at the stake was terrifyingly simple. If God's ultimate punishment is eternal fire, well, then we can mirror that justice right here on earth. A single theological idea with absolutely devastating real-world consequences.
And that kind of brings us full circle. We've just walked through the history of a powerful idea that shaped a world, a belief that was central to the earliest Christian thinkers, but then got almost completely lost in the West. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other forgotten histories, how many other powerful ideas are still quietly echoing in our world today, shaping things in ways we don't even see?